We're all here? Well, welcome everyone. It's 8 o'clock and welcome to the first committee meeting of the Senate Transportation Committee. My name is Stefan Pappas. I'm going to be your new Transportation Chairman for the Senate. I'm looking forward to filling that role and honored and eager to serve. So thank you. First, a few housekeeping items that I'd like to do. First of all, I want to thank our new staff person, Pierre. Great to have you on board. Looking forward to working with you in the committee for the next, during the 68th. I'm also thankful for all the members on this committee. I'm looking forward to working with some great people. Also would like to mention that during the proceedings of the Senate Transportation Committee meeting, we all are looking for civility and being able to conduct our work in a proper manner. So please, everyone out there, if you address your remarks to through the chair, excuse me, we would appreciate it. Also, trying to keep our meetings on a fairly even keel, a fairly good pace. I would ask anybody with public testimony to, if someone's up, feel free, the next person to come up and fill the chairs. Okay, we don't need the lag period. So I appreciate that if you do that. Please silence your phones while we're in committee. I ask the committee members to do the same thing. Also, I will request that all committee members, when you take a vote, to use your microphones. There have been issues out there when people online don't know how people vote because they don't hear you. So please, when you vote, please use your microphone. And there are, during the course of the year, you'll see there's committee absentee voting forms. I will allow absentee voting without you having to be here to listen to the testimony. We will also on this committee be taking seconds on bills. Okay, well, it's kind of a few ground rules. If everybody's great with that, we'll continue on. Okay, so let's discuss our first bill. Oh yes, we will also have roll call. Thank you. Okay, I'll get it straight one of these days.
Senator Anderson?
Here.
Senator Brennan?
Here.
Senator Cooper?
Here.
Senator Cole?
Present.
Chairman Pappas?
Here. Okay, so first on our agenda is Senate File 32. Oh, excuse me, got them out of order. Senate File 25, Electronic Lien and Title Systems. Okay. We typically sometimes have our LSO attorney here walking us through the bills. We won't have our LSO attorneys here. I don't know if the department would come forward and walk us through this bill. That would be a great idea. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to address this today. My name is Lacey Bruckner. I'm with the Wyoming Department of Transportation Compliance Investigation Section. The department worked with the Electronic Title Working Group over the interim to try to develop a layout for an electronic titling system that would be beneficial for consumers in our state, as well as many other stakeholder industries such as vehicle dealers, lenders, the insurance industry, the trucking industry, and so forth. So with that, overview of this bill is basically it establishes guidelines for the state to implement an electronic titling system where titles can be held electronically, liens can be filed and maintained electronically, applications for title can be submitted electronically. Either for the consumers, wanted the consumers to be able to have a choice. So while every title would be entered into this electronic titling system for consistency, if a consumer wished to still go to their local county clerk and file paper title application, they could do that, and the county clerk's office would go ahead and submit all that information through this system to make it beneficial for everyone, including industry and consumers and the counties and the state. So as we walk through this bill, the first section sets out what the electronic lien and titling system would be, that titles could be issued through that system, liens recorded through that system, and the data held through that system, and transferred accordingly. So we look at page 2. This just sets out the guidelines for the data for the lien and the titling being held in the electronic titling system, excuse me. That sales tax could be paid through that system, and that the department would administer that, being the repository for title data throughout the state. On page 3 of the bill, that sets out that lien holders and dealers and those industry members would mandatorily use the system, as I mentioned in the overview, and that consumers could go through their county clerk's offices to process that information into the system. Page 4 talks about records and just establishes that county clerks can now forward the record of their titling electronically through this system to the department. Let's see, through page 5. Also just sets out how the records will be kept in the system and how the system would be administered. Same through page 6. Page 7, starting on lines 13, that just specifically authorizes the title information to be processed through electronic lien and titling system, in addition to paper if a consumer wanted to. Again, on page 8, talks about, starting at line 14, that talks about the VIN inspection requirement for a title application, and that authorizes that document to be submitted, uploaded and submitted through an electronic titling system as well, just so that every piece of the title application, every supplemental document can all be held through this one system for consistency and easy access for the county clerk's offices and ease for industry and consumers, where it's all held in one place. Page 9, line 18, that gives the customer the option, once the title is issued, to request an actual paper title if they would prefer to have that piece of paper in hand, or should they be going to another jurisdiction that does not have electronic titling yet, they would be able to easily get that document to transfer ownership or transfer their title and registration in another state. On page 10, starting on line 21, that just clarifies the ability to sign title application documents through an electronic signature that's already established in Title 40, to clarify that those electronic signatures are acceptable for title applications and the other documents that go with those. On page 11, starting on line 17, again, that addresses a transfer of ownership and the process of transferring a title, and also authorizes the use of an electronic signature according to the provisions in Title 40. Same thing with the electronic signatures on page 12 and those other two sections, just to clarify that those electronic signatures are acceptable. Again, on page 13, starting on line 5, just clarifying the authorization of electronic signature for transfer of ownership paperwork. Let's see, on page 15, this starts addressing statute 31-2-105, subparagraph A on line 1. That paragraph addresses duplicate titles, and that sets forth the ability to hold a duplicate, or excuse me, to hold a duplicate title that's issued in electronic format, or if you're applying for a duplicate title, you may still request a paper title for that. So if I have a title now and this were to go into effect and I lose that title, I don't have documentation anymore. I can go in, indicate I've lost the title. A title can be reissued, and I can choose to either hold that in paper format or maintain that in the electronic titling system. Starting on line 18, subparagraph B of that statute, that section provides for an affidavit of ownership and bonded title process if I purchase a vehicle that I'm not able to obtain a title for. And this section carrying on to page 16 also just allows that process, the affidavit of ownership and bonded title process, to be applied for and issued through the electronic titling system. And that affidavit of ownership and bonded title language goes through page 18 and 19. And each section there just clarifies that the affidavit of ownership and bonded title process can go through the electronic titling system. Starting at the bottom of page 19 on line 20, this section starts into provisions for salvage titles for vehicles that have been declared a total loss or damaged above 75% of their retail value. And in these sections, starting on line 11, that also gives consumers, insurance industry, the ability to apply for a salvage title, also through the electronic titling system, or to request a paper title if they choose to. Page 21, starting on line 13, again, also just allows that an insurance company, if they maintain the vehicle upon a total loss, to be able to go through the electronic titling system to obtain a salvage title so that they can dispose of that vehicle through their policies. On page 22, starting on line 9, that section addresses leased vehicles that are declared a total loss, and again, just authorizes a person to go through the electronic titling system. Subparagraph J there, starting on line 21, again, that is a person acquiring possession of a salvage vehicle that has not already been issued a salvage title. That person can also go through the electronic titling system. Page 23, again, just reiterates that same information for insurance companies, salvage pools, et cetera, that are applying for a salvage title. On page 24, line 2, section 3, addresses the department to establish rules and regulations to implement this act and to contract with a vendor or vendors to implement the system. Section 4 requires the system to be implemented by July 1st of 2027. And that's a basic, I guess, walkthrough of this bill, and I would stand for any questions.
Well, thank you very much. Committee, any questions regarding the bill that you want to ask of the department? Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, let's see, what page was it on? Oh, page 8 says any licensed Wyoming dealer performing an inspection of vehicle identification number. My experience is that it always has to be done by the sheriff's department. Is there something new with that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, this statute authorized our licensed Wyoming vehicle dealers to do a VIN inspection for vehicles that are currently in their inventory for sale. There's another section of statute that requires them to inspect each VIN on every vehicle they take into inventory to ensure that the VIN is valid, that there's no alteration, and that it matches the paperwork they were given by the person or auction that they obtained that vehicle from. So since those dealers are required to do that thorough inspection of the VIN anyway, this statute authorizes them, and has for several years, authorizes them to conduct VIN inspections on the vehicles in their inventory before they sell them. So there is a reassignment form that our dealers use when they sell a vehicle to a consumer. There is a portion of that form that is used for the dealer to certify that they inspected the VIN on that vehicle and that it matches the paperwork and it's a valid VIN. So for those vehicles that are in their inventory, dealers are allowed to do a VIN inspection. And when they give that paperwork to the consumer then takes that document into the county clerk's office to get their title. So in those situations where it was in the dealer's inventory, that customer doesn't have to go to law enforcement to get a VIN inspection. They can use the one that the dealership has already conducted.
Okay, thank you.
Committee, any further questions? I do have one, Lacey. If you go to page 2, line 20, paragraph C, and on to page 3, regarding the contract, a contract with a vendor to do this work, it allows for the charge of a transaction fee to cover the vendor's costs, which is logical. But the last statement says no vendor shall charge any fees under this subsection to the state or counties. So how does that work? Does it, I mean, are they going to be billing the, I would think that probably the state would collect any charge and then pass it on to the vendor, but am I mistaken?
Mr. Chairman, in working with the other stakeholders through the working group, in determining how these systems work and how they are developed, it was the hope of the electronic titling system working group that there would be no excessive expense to the counties or the state, that this electronic titling system would be funded solely through transaction fees. We were able to have a couple of vendors provide us demonstrations of how their systems work, where they have a transaction fee for issuance of a title, a transaction fee for lien filing, a transaction fee for lien release, transaction fee for transfer of a title. And so the hope of the working group was that this system could be solely funded that way, not to create hardship of expense in programming or anything like that through the counties or through the state. And so that is the reason that language is there, just to ensure that when the department contracts with a vendor through an RFP, that particular vendor would be able to develop the system, implement the system, interface it with the other stakeholders, the county systems, the dealer systems, the lender systems, all through transaction fees rather than through the state. So the system would solely be funded there. So if a person were to apply for a title, or a dealership were to sell a vehicle, and they would go through the electronic titling system to submit all that documentation, there would be a transaction fee for that. Same for a lender when they would be filing a lien through the system, that there would be a transaction fee for that. Does that answer your question, Mr. Chairman?
I think so. So the intent is that the state or the counties actually, it doesn't come out of their pocket, but they are actually collecting the fee and paying the vendor.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. The system will be able to collect those fees within it. If a consumer were to come to the counter with their paper, and the county would enter that documentation through the system and issue an electronic title through the system, then yes, the county would collect that fee.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you tell me, on private sale, if I sell a 40-year-old vehicle to the good senator here, how's that going to be handled? It's pretty straight up right now, but do we all have to go to the courthouse to get that done, or what happens?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cooper, if you have a private party sale like that, you would have the option to still go down to the county with the paper, and the county would enter your information into the system for you. If you chose to, you could do the transfer of ownership and enter the title application paperwork through the electronic titling system individually. Each person, each resident would have a client ID within the electronic titling system. It would be secure so that you would have a secure login that no one else could access your information. You could go in, transfer ownership of that vehicle to Chairman Pappas, and he then could log into this system through his unique identifier client ID, and he would be able to finish the paperwork, the application process through the online system. You both could do that all online in the comfort of your home if you chose to, or you could go to the county and take care of it. That would be at the consumer level, your choice.
A little follow-up. Mr. Chairman, can you tell me what kind of transition time we're talking about for the existing title system to, I've got titles that are 30 or 40 years old, so.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cooper, currently the department holds a record of all titles issued in the state. We have a system for that, and we hold all the records for all registration as well. Once this electronic titling system were to be in place, should this bill pass, and once it's implemented, then all the existing title transactions from that point forward would enter through the system. Titles that are out there already that have been issued would remain the same. However, this electronic titling system would interface with WYDOT's state records of all titles. It would interface with each county's title record database and each county's registration record database. So the existing titles that you hold now would not have to be entered into the electronic titling system. The electronic titling system could see that you were the holder of that vehicle. Your title number is the current title for that vehicle. And if you were to sell it, at that point, the buyer could go through the electronic titling system. The interface would tell the buyer that you are the rightful last owner of record for that vehicle, and the transaction would take place that way. But the existing titles prior to this system being implemented would not have to be fed into the system itself. They would interface with the title record that the state holds now in the counties. Does that answer your question? Kind of.
Thank you. Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to circle back around again on these fees that are really an unknown situation, it sounds like. Did the vendors give you any idea of what the fee range may be? I don't know what the particulars are for that range, but I think it's a pretty important question that people need to get an answer. I mean, I have to have an answer of some range. So I wish that if you have one, please, if you could explain it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, we did reach out to the vendors that were kind enough to provide us a demonstration so that the members of the working group were able to understand how these systems work and that the interfaces could take place. Given what the working group was working for with a system where it would solely be funded by transaction fees, we were able to get an estimate range, I guess, for each transaction fee from those vendors, depending on the vendor, depending on the volume of transactions also affects the cost. But the ranges that we were given for a system solely funded through transaction fees were to file a lien or activate a lien would have been between $2 and $15 based on an average of the numbers that those handful of vendors were able to provide. A lien release would have been transaction fee between $1 and $10 from the $1 and $10, excuse me, from the estimates the vendors provided. Title application between $10 and $35. Title transfer between $25 and $50. Consumer title transfer would have been $10 to $25. Dealer title transfer, $10 to $50. And that's just because of some of the additional paperwork that goes along with that. A salvage or junk title between $2 and $50, again, depending on the documentation that goes with that. Sometimes with a salvage or junk, you need to have total loss verification from an insurance company. If the insurance company's taking possession of the vehicle and selling it through a salvage pool or something like that, there are extra steps, more pieces within that process to transfer ownership. To request a paper title be printed from the electronic titling system, they estimated between 10 and 20, depending on the vendor. And then a registration fee, if that were implemented in through the system as well, so that I could go on, get my title, pay my sales tax, and go ahead and register right there. That was between $5 and $50. Temporary permit would be between $5 and $10. Regular registration, like first initial registration, would be between $35 and $50, and a renewal fee would be between $5 and $25. Now, those are obviously just estimates. When we reached out to the vendors to ask for this type of estimate, we explained to them a ballpark of how many titles are currently in the state, so they would have an idea of volume and the types of transactions that the working group would hope to see through this type of a system, so that it could be cover the entire process from the birth of the car till when it's junked out. And so we tried to give them as much specifics as we could as what we would like to see this system do should this pass, so that we could get the best estimates available. But again, they're just estimates. There's no way to determine that this is exactly what that would cost without going through the RFP process and contracting with a vendor.
Mr. Chairman, follow up on that.
Sure.
I guess I'm wondering about the setup that the vendor's going to charge you as opposed to the fees afterwards. Is there a setup for this whole system?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, the intention was there not to be an implementation fee or a setup fee, that the system would be entirely funded through transaction fees.
Sure.
The department does currently work through a vendor for a temporary registration permit system. Now, that's not nearly as complicated as a system like this would be, but how that contract worked was that vendor developed they already had software in place, but they developed the system to Wyoming's business rules for temporary registrations. They tested it, did a pilot for it to work out any kind of bugs, and then implemented it for dealers to issue temporary permits and county treasurers to issue temporary permits. And that system's solely funded by transaction fees. So every time a county or a dealer in Wyoming issues a temporary registration permit, it's $5. And that $5 has funded that system since its beginning. So the department never had to pay an implementation cost or interface costs or anything like that, that it's solely funded by that $5 transaction fee for each temporary permit. And in working with the working group members and going through how we could make a system that would benefit the state without causing financial hardship to any party within this, we were hoping that maybe we could get, should this pass, we could get a system that would work that way. Thank you.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just kind of a follow-up to this line of, I guess, thought. So if someone wanted to go in the traditional way, what they currently do, does this stop them from doing that? Is the first question. In other words, do we get rid of what we're doing now and just go to electronic, or can we do both for the people that, I guess, understand it? And this is probably for non-dealers, right? I mean, I think as I kind of got a little gelled in my head about what happened during the summer, the non-dealer folks that are, the dealers, I know, I've heard testimony that they're in agreement with this and they're okay with this type of format, this idea that you're proposing. But regular folks, the ones that are, like me or anyone that just wanted to do something like this without, going through the bank, they're just doing their business. How would it affect them? I mean, would they have to do something different? I suppose that's my question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, the language within the bill throughout all the sections that address applying for a title or title issuance gives the consumer the choice to physically go into their county clerk's office with the paper documents to apply for a title. You could still mail those documents to the county clerk's office to obtain a title. That gives the consumer the choice. So if you're not comfortable with doing the application process online and having your title held electronically, you don't have to. You can still request a paper title, you can still take the documents in, you can still mail the documents in. In that event, when the consumer would choose to continue to do it the way it's done now by paper, the county clerk's office would enter that information into the electronic titling system so that it's there, so that consistently all of our title records from that point forward are held in one place. And then you would still have the ability to do everything by paper.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anderson.
So are the fees the same for the guy that wants to sell a vehicle himself, for the title and the bill of sale and all those kind of things? He wants to do that all paper. Are the fees the same as if he had done it electronically because the clerk is gonna put it in electronically?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, the fees that are already established in statute for a title, for a VIN inspection, if that were required, those fees would still be the same. Those aren't addressed in this bill. There would be the additional transaction fee if you chose to have your title held electronically. There would still be the transaction fee for that. If you chose to print a paper title, there would still be a transaction fee within the system for that, I believe, the way I understand from the vendors how this would work. So there would still be those transaction fees, but the cost of a title itself that's already established in the statute would remain the same. And those title fees go to the county. The VIN inspection fees go to the law enforcement agency that conducted the VIN inspection, so forth.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you tell me how many other states are using this system now and what kind of issues they've had with their transition?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cooper, there are several states that use some form of electronic titling. There are different levels of electronic titling. Some states, they just hold the title electronically and file the lien electronically. So everything else is done by paper. The application is submitted by paper. The person either goes through the mail or physically comes into a counter to submit the application paperwork. The lien information is submitted electronically and the title itself is held electronically. So in those states' titling systems, you can see that there's a title in existence and it belongs to this resident and this lender holds a lien on it. There are 3 or 4 states that have a completely full electronic titling system like what's addressed here. And those states, in the beginning, there were some challenges in transitioning from paper to electronic titling. Those states do offer the ability, just like this, for a consumer to request a paper title. There have been some technical challenges. There have been challenges with respect to requesting a paper title for transfer from one jurisdiction to another that has a different level of electronic titling or maybe no electronic titling. So those have been some of the main challenges that other jurisdictions have addressed with this. And then issues of trying to think, where if a business, if there's a dealership or a lender that goes out of business, how to proceed with a title transfer if that particular entity that holds the lien or that holds the ownership isn't available to release the lien or transfer in their system. But those are just technicalities that just have to be worked out through their system, that sometimes you can't foresee everything that might happen, so you have to address those as you go. The department works with the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. We're members of that association. They have workshops and meetings with other jurisdictions for jurisdictions to share the experiences they've had with that and the do's and don'ts, so that it's really fortunate that there are some other peers out there, jurisdictions that have gone through this, that you can address these things with or see what they've done so that you maybe know how to set yourself up to not encounter those things or how to deal with them should they arise.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, thank you, Lacey.
Thank you very much.
Are there any county clerks or county treasurers out there that would like to speak to this? I think we have one online, but we'll wait for online later, but please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. My name is Mary Lankford, and I have the honor of representing the county clerks of the state of Wyoming. And my comments are short. You've heard all of the nuts and bolts already. The clerks have been involved in a working group, and even though we anticipate the results of this system to build in efficiencies, one thing is that documentation will still be required, as it is now for titles and liens, and that will go into the system and be preserved there, filed there. The clerks appreciate the fact that are no proposed additional costs to the counties and that the effective date is July 2027. So we'll have plenty of time to get everything implemented. This date will allow enough time for completion of the RFP process, time for training on the new system, ensure interoperability with all partners, and allow upgrades to existing title products. Clerks will continue to actively participate in the working group through the RFP process and the new system's implementation to ensure the very best result. And thank you for the opportunity. We've appreciated the opportunity to be involved with the other partners of the working group. It's a big group of folks, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Ready? Thank you, Ms. Lankford.
Thank you.
Okay, any other governmental body that would like to speak to this before I open it up for general discussion? I know we have one online, but I'll wait for online till the end. Okay, anybody would like to, from the general public, like to speak to this? Please, everyone come forward and fill the seats. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bobby Frank, representing Wyoming's credit unions.
Jeremy Gibson, representing Toronto Valley and Southwest Wyoming.
Dave Kraus, representing Unowyo Credit Union in Laramie, Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of Wyoming's 23 credit unions, who serve over 330,000 members across the state, we appreciate this committee's attention to this issue and taking this up as an interim study topic. I would just refer the committee to the June and the September meeting materials as well, if you would like to see additional information pertaining to the past discussions, including Senator Kolb, your question on the fees. I was curiously digging through the phone and through your past materials, trying to find the answers to some of those questions, and I believe some of that material is there. We would like to thank you for advancing Senate File 25 over the interim. The credit unions collectively came together and did some strategic planning a couple years ago. And in that, this was one of their top priorities, to move the state into the modern era with the titling system. And these two gentlemen are going to share with you the impacts of our current system on their business. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the groups that worked over the last year and a half on this. I believe you have a copy of an electronic titling issue paper in front of you that lists all the groups that participated. Special thanks to Senator Brennan for her active participation in that group as well. We did hash through a lot of these questions and issues on how to move this forward. One of our main objectives, as Lacey mentioned, some of the states that have adopted e-titling have done so for just part of the process. So they may hold the title electronically and do a lien release electronically, but the rest of the process is still handled with paperwork. And what we're proposing, and there is one other state moving that direction at this particular time, but there's significant discussion of states expanding their titling. So it's from the beginning to the end of that process to get maximum efficiency. We believe the implementation of this system will be a cost savings for the parties involved in the transactions, our credit unions, our banks, our counties, and private consumers in the state of Wyoming. In 2023, we inventoried our credit unions. Of just 9 of our 23 credit unions processed 24,000 new and used card loans. So that gives you an idea of the magnitude of the implications of the titling process. In addition, just 7 of those credit unions incur an annual cost of over $300,000 under our current system that could provide tremendous cost savings by moving to an online platform. As Lacey described, the intent is that the platform, and as it is in other states, will be paid with the transaction fees paid by the financial institutions, by the auto dealers, by the private consumer who choose to avail themselves of the system. We did have a discussion at one of the committee meetings about whether that, and LSO posed a question in the bill draft of whether those fees should be established in the statute. Our opinion is that should be done through the rulemaking. In part, our experience is if you tell a vendor how much money you have to spend, typically your bid comes in pretty close to what you said you had to spend. So we would prefer to see the RFP issued, and then once that's established, then the department promulgate those rules that we anticipate will be fully engaged in. We believe this system will really bring us into the modern era, much like a lot of other systems such as mortgage lending, et cetera, where you can conduct that fully online. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer more detailed questions, but would turn it over to the 2 gentlemen to my right.
Okay, gentlemen, welcome.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, As I mentioned before, I'm Jeremy Gibson, CEO of Toronto Valley Community Federal Credit Union. We were founded by a group of miners in the Toronto industry in 1963, and today we serve about 30,000 members with branches in Mountain View, Evanston, Green River, and Rock Springs. And I too all want to extend my sincere appreciation to Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for the work that you've done on this issue and your sponsorship of the legislation. I am here because in the last year, our credit union has experienced an increase in instances of fraud and attempted fraud, and this is incurred in part due to the current titling and reporting system. In 2 instances, we had vehicles for which we held a lien that were taken to neighboring states, and when the title search was done through the National Motor Vehicle Title Information System database, no liens were shown for those vehicles. That lack of lien information allowed those vehicles to be retitled and sold without satisfying those liens. Those states also did not make the necessary call to YDOT, and as a result, they didn't see any of our information provided in the national database. It resulted in about a $75,000 loss just with those 2 vehicles for the credit union and its members. We are currently in dispute with 2 additional vehicles, different situations, but it seems like it's a growing issue and will continue to grow. And it's my hope that the changes with this bill will address or at least reduce some of the fraud that we're seeing. And again, I want to thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Dave Kraus. I'm the CEO of Uniwyo Credit Union in Laramie. We were founded in 1953 by a group of educators at the University of Wyoming. And we currently serve 56,000 members throughout the state with our 8 branches in Laramie, Cheyenne, Casper, Glen Rock, Douglas, Cody, and on the University of Wyoming campus. I want to extend my sincere appreciation to you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee for taking up this priority interim and the e-titling work group, the Department of Transportation for their leadership in advancing this discussion. Our issue is around storage fees. So in 2024, we processed over 2,400 titles, vehicle loans, and we currently store 12,000 titles at a out-of-state facility. It cost us approximately $30,000 to do that in 2023. In 2024, it was over $42,000. We also estimate that we spend about $10,000 in postage costs. We support the draft bill and believe this will drastically improve our current titling process and result in tremendous efficiencies, saving our members both time and money in the long run. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Franks, Mr. Gibson, and Mr. Kraus. Please, anyone else, come down and fill the seats. Okay, who wants to go first?
I guess it's me. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Marcia Allen with Wyoming Automobile Dealers Association. We, along with myself and several of our members, participated in the working group throughout the interim. I would like to thank the committee for their taking up the issue and all of the other stakeholders that participated. We had a very robust group and are fully supportive of this draft bill. I also have participated nationally with my counterparts on a e-title working group that they have and brought back some of the information that I gathered from other states on how the system is working, what to maybe watch out for that they ran into, and relayed that information during the interim as well. So I would stand for any questions if you have detailed information that you would like.
Okay. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, are there any other small states that use this system, or are most of them larger states that have initiated this?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, the national group that I've been attending have about 60 attendees normally to those meetings. So it's every state that's looking at it. Montana is the closest one. And I'm not sure if they are completely established yet, but they are in the process and going through it, Idaho as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Meyer.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Scott Meyer on behalf of the Wyoming Bankers Association, representing all your community banks. I will dispense with all the other comments that were made because I think we're in agreement with them, but the biggest area that you might imagine that we're concerned about is with the liens. And we believe that as we've gone through this and been part of the working committee, that we think that this provision does allow for sufficient put liens on those titles, and as well as releasing those liens. And I think that's important to make sure that we maintain the costs as well. One other thought I would share with you that if I take off my banker's hat for a minute and put on my attorney's hat, that I look at this from an attorney's standpoint. I just handled an estate for an individual that had done a great estate plan and put everything into his trust, except for the 18 vehicles that he had. Trying to go through this and trying to make sure that that gets done and the cost that was involved. I believe that when this system is up and running, and hopefully I won't be doing that kind of practice anymore by that time, but I think that this will be a very efficient way to do things in a very cost-saving way, just to make sure that you can track down the vehicles, track down the titles, track down to make sure where they go, affidavits of survivorship, affidavits of summary distribution. I think this will be a very big benefit for that. So with that, members of the committee, I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you. Eddie? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Chris Mickey. I represent the Wyoming Business Alliance. First of all, welcome back to Cheyenne. It's good to see all of you. I really want to applaud the members of the working group and the committee in the interim for your hard work on this. I think it's come out with a great product. We do support this legislation. As you've heard from my colleagues, the credit unions and the banks do support this, of which many of them are our members at the Business Alliance. And we also support it because it creates a good government efficiency, which is great for not only that business, but the businesses on the other end who are purchasing vehicles, especially those who are purchasing many or several vehicles, such as a fleet of vehicles. And so this will really save them time and money as they go to get their titles done after they've made these large purchases. And we really feel that they've gotten this bill into a good place. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Doesn't look like we have any. Thank you for all of you for testifying. Anyone else in the room? None? Okay, so let's move online. I believe we have at least one person online. Yep, please bring Ms. Fries in.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. This is Julie Fries. I'm the Fremont County Clerk, and I was also on the working group. And thank you, first of all, Mary, for a very good report of how the county clerks have been involved. I have been involved in the working group, and while the clerks have participated in this process and support this bill, the work will need to be diligent in the RFP process for a vendor that will work for all of the clerk's existing systems, that they all have to dovetail with each one of our systems so we don't have to change our systems, which I understand they can do. Well, this makes the process simple and efficient for banks and dealers. The clerks still have a lot of paperwork, although now it's electronically sent to us to review. We still have to review it. So it isn't 1 or 2 pieces of paper that comes with a title. It can be up to 6 to 10 pieces of paper that we have to review. We will still have tight timelines, as Scott Meyer just mentioned, to review these applications, especially with those with liens. And we have to make sure to get the UCC filings completed by statutory guidelines. So that's very important. Right now, we review all of the documents that are sent to us by banks with the liens on or dealerships. And if they're not correct, we have to immediately send it back so that they can fix what is not correct and get back to us. Once it's okay, there is a stamp that we currently do by hand, which I assume we can have the RFP tell us, okay, once you say this is fine, you can hit it. Because if I get 500 documents in my office in Fremont County, they aren't going to get done today. I can tell you that. With some of the, the changes in how much money counties are going to get, we aren't going to be able to add more people. So we're still going to look at a lot of stuff and And I just want people to understand that. Pros for the county clerks is one of the things we've asked for is we automatically have to do an NVIDIS report, which is a national database report, making sure that it's not stolen, it's not a salvage vehicle, that the title we have in front of us really is the last title. And if that would be an auto check, which we understand maybe would be one of the criteria, that would be awesome. You put in the VIN, it already does it for you. That's one thing, we don't have to type in a VIN for that in particular. And we also would like an auto MSRP. And two great things about that is we'll all be doing it the same because you'll have a system that says this is how you do the the MSRP. So you put in the VIN and it would automatically tell us we're not from county to county being different on that. So that would be good. And it also would make sure we, again, don't have to type it into another system that says what's the MSRP on this. So the only other thing that has been talked about a little bit, but has not really been solidified is also our hope that sales tax on these transfers are considered as part of the process. We currently hold several titles in our files that are not paid for sales tax, which means they can't go to the treasurer's office, which would also be a part of this, to get their plates. Instead of it being held in a physical file here, it would be electronically, but still, we're still not getting some sales tax, a lot of sales tax on the transfer of vehicles. We are used to doing e-recording, so we understand the process of electronically filing something. And just so that you know, e-recording, for those of us who have picked that up, it has increased our volume of how much we get in during the day. And it makes it very difficult sometimes to make sure we get through all of them and all the stuff that still comes through across the counter. So that's my only information for you, and I thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Julie. Any questions of Ms. Fries? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
I believe there's no one else online. Okay, thank you. All right, so I'll close public testimony at this time. Committee, what's your pleasure?
To me that, and I don't know how this would exactly work in the bill, or maybe we just make a request, but this is a big lift. A lot of people have been working on this. It's very complicated and it's a new thing. I would personally prefer that we get a report back in 26 to this committee about the progress of this bill and just what they've come up with fees and such, so we have a better handle on it. I think, I don't know how that would, I never asked this before, so I don't know how it would work if we put it in the bill or just make a request, because it won't implement until 26. So there'll be a 27. So we bring it back to review it, only because I think to me, the public has a right to know what these fees are going to be. I understand the dealers, banks are happy, everybody's happy, but just to have over a 3 times variance on what the fee may be is a big question for me. So I don't know if it needs to be anything formal besides, Mr. Chairman, you asking for them to come back and maybe give us an update. If that's sufficient, I'm happy with that, but I wanted a discussion about just kind of the open-endedness of these fees.
Thank you, Senator Kolb. I do think it's a good idea to have that knowledge before it actually is implemented in 27. However, through the rulemaking process as well, there's public comment period, and certainly all of that information would be made public, I'm assuming, during that process. So I think we will have plenty opportunity to ask some questions going forward. Don't think that that's necessarily required in the bill, personally. Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was able to sit in on some of those working group meetings, and they were very thoughtful about the fees, very cognizant about the price and about the system. I also want to point out that what electronic stuff we are doing now, that system was back in like 1980s, and it was updated in 1994. And that's like as old as I am. So it is really time that we update this system with the technology that we have and step into the 21st century, because that was last century.
Thank you. Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Senator Brennan here that this system probably needs a lot of updating. I do have concerns we don't have any input from the consumers, the people that actually happen to use this other than the implementers, but the vehicle owners, I have concerns about, especially a lot of our older generation that don't have access to computers, and there are a lot of folks in a lot of my communities that don't do anything electronically. So there's two sides to that story as far as the upgrade. But I think it's something that needs to move forward. It's a good committee bill, and I support committee bills. So as such, I will support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Fortunately, they don't have to do it electronically if they don't want to. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
it's still going to be done electronically. They can get a paper copy of it, but somebody's still got to go do this electronically, is how I understand it. And that's, in a lot of cases, that's not going to be the person that's actually buying or selling the car in a private setting. Through a dealership, I understand it, but I do have concerns about the actual consumer of the vehicles. Thank you.
So if a person is selling a car to another person, all that can be done paper if they want. They can just go in and do it, an application like they can today. The dealers, the lending institutions, all that will be required to be electronic. But person to person, no, they can still go in if they're not comfortable with the electronic process. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I missed it. I didn't understand how this was going to help with fraud unless it goes into some national system that everyone can access. I guess our paper system does not do that now, so we do have those fraud systems happening. Maybe we could get this.
I would suggest that maybe you speak to the folks from the financial sector and maybe even the dealers offline, and I'm sure they could probably let you know.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so committee, any amendments you'd like to see to this bill? Okay, hearing that none, then let's take a roll call, please.
Senator Anderson,
Aye.
Senator Brennan,
Aye.
Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Kolb,
Aye.
Chairman Pappas.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, thank you. And I've asked Senator Anderson to please carry this on the floor. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for helping me through my very first bill in committee. Okay, so now we're on to Senate File 32, Unpaved Roads Speed Limit Amendments. Could we please have the department come down and talk to us about this bill?
Which one are you on, 32?
32. Good morning, Mr. Gillette.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Senators. Just try to quickly walk you through the bill.
Mark, would you please introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mark Gillette, Chief Engineer with WYDOT.
Thank you.
So on page 1, lines 1 through 5 is just the bill summary. Basically, it authorizes local authorities to set maximum speed limits on unpaved roads without first conducting a speed study or justifying the speed limit. Then on page 2, lines 1 through 19 is the meat of the bill. Currently, in compliance with WYDOT rules, local authorities within their jurisdiction may determine speed limits for all their roads. The rules promulgated by the department shall adopt standards consistent with national practices. Then what's new there is that the department shall not promulgate rules that require speed study before a local authority establishes a maximum speed limit for unpaved roads. And Part F adds to that a local authority may establish a maximum speed limit of not more than 55 miles per hour for unpaved roadways under Wyoming Statute 315301B, parent Roman numeral 4, without first conducting a speed study or providing justification for the maximum speed limit. And then on page 3, sections 2 and 3 are effective immediately, meaning YDOT will have to promulgate rules. And then the meat of the bill there is effective July 1. So with that, Mr. Chairman, certainly stand for any questions.
Committee questions? Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, could you, I guess, explain the nature of the rules you have to promulgate to make this work with your, with YDOT? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, the current rules and regs adopted are such that any speed limit set other than the statutorily set speed limit must be done in conjunction with a speed study done by an engineer. So if this bill passes, YDOT will have to open up that rule and reg and change that, allowing local authorities to be able to change the speed limit on unpaved roads without performing that speed study.
Committee, further questions? The department? Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, so if a county has a paved road, wouldn't come under this. That comes under other rules?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, that is correct.
I'll be darned.
So this is basically unpaved roads, allowing them to set a speed limit up to 55 without doing a speed study. I'm assuming counties or local jurisdictions would take that pretty seriously because there may be some liability issues with setting higher speeds. I know there's certainly a lot of problems with roads that are not maintained very well, and higher speeds are problems, but perhaps maybe we'll hear from the counties. So any other questions of the department? Okay, thank you, Mr. Gillette. Appreciate your testimony. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Jonathan Russell. I'm a policy analyst for the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. First, I'd like to say a big thank you for the interim discussion on this topic and to address a few of the issues that our commissioners have stated about their gravel roads within the county. As you said, a speed study is an important part, and that is one of the areas that have been brought up as far as the commissioners are concerned. Speed studies are costly, money-wise and time-wise for them. County roads are part of the transportation system. Counties take care of 2,300 miles of roadway and over 15,000 miles of unpaved roads. Unpaved roads are gravel and dirt. For a little perspective, Laramie County has a total of 1,450 total miles of roadway. 250 miles are paved, 1,200 miles are unpaved. Contrast that with Carbon County, which has a total of 946 miles of county road. 120 miles are paved, 820 miles are unpaved, and 410 miles are dirt, no gravel whatsoever. And so because of the number of unpaved roads and the speed studies that that go along with them, some of the county engineers have come up with a term called engineering judgment. And what that means is they feel they have a good sense of what those roads are like. They drive them, they talk to their citizens about them, as well as the sheriffs. And so they've come to the request that maybe we should have the opportunity, since we know these roads pretty well, to limit the speed on the road or even decrease the speed on the road, and do so without a speed study. And so that is kind of the conversation that we had in the interim, and that's where we're at today. And so I believe the initial request or the initial discussion early on in the interim session was that 45 to 55 mile an hour speed zone that they would have the opportunity to increase or decrease, not going above the 55. It's now up to 55. So that's where we're at today. I can tell you that next week our members will vote on their position. We have, as the bill is written right now, we have a support of the bill. That's what we recommended to them, but that could change next week. So that's where we're at today.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Questions?
Yeah.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. See, Mr. Russell, it's my understanding that we've got a varied situation with counties. We have some counties that want to lower the speed because of certain situations, and some counties probably would want to raise the speed limit, maybe without the study, up to the 55, without a speed study. So I see it as two different, like, sideboards to the question. And I will also assure you that Sweetwater has in excess of 20,000 miles of two-track roads. I think it's closer to 30 of two tracks because of the size of the county that we've identified in Sweetwater. I know it's a little bit of conjecture there about what we're calling a road, but an unimproved two-track road is what there's a huge amount of them out there. And I think the challenge for you as a county commissioner, person that represents the group, is, what's the right fit for everybody? And your opinion that we've landed in a good spot here after the interim topic and discussions about just what it cost everybody for a speed study, and the fact that the Board of County Commissioners, and I'm asking your opinion, seem to be the experts in the counties that they are elected to govern, would be able to make, prudent choices for the safety of the people within that county. I mean, I think you said that that's still the belief here, that that's the correct direction, up until your members might vote differently. But so to be clear that we're good with all that we had done, and they don't find it an issue with, the liability side of this equation. And maybe I'm being rhetorical, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Russell.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, yes. A couple of things. The liability discussion has occurred. Number two, this is an option for counties to do if they so choose, and everyone is comfortable with where the bill is at today.
Thank you. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, what is if a county uses rotomill on a road, is that considered unpaved, or is that a paved road?
Mr. Russell.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, I do not know the answer to that question, but I can definitely find out for you and get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, committee, any other questions? Thank you. Any other public comment on this? I don't believe we have anyone online. Okay, well, then we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion. Senator Anderson.
No.
Oh.
Just getting ready to.
Voting no?
Senator Kolb.
This is going south quickly, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion.
I think it's a good bill, Mr. Chairman, and being a county commissioner for 8 years and dealing with what we're the subject of this speed study and just the liability and cost, I think it's a prudent bill that puts the responsibility to the people that were elected locally because they know those roads best. And frankly, road conditions change from week to week, day to day, and they would be the best ones to implement. So I'm in full support of the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Brennan.
Mr. Chairman, I will be a no vote on this bill like I was in committee. While I appreciate the perspective of Senator Kolb, I think that it's prudent to be doing studies before changing speed limits.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. Let's do a roll call. Thank you.
Senator Anderson,
Aye.
Senator Brennan,
No.
Senator Cooper. Senator Kolb,
Aye.
Chairman Pappas.
Aye.
4 ayes, 1 no.
Thank you. And I've asked Senator Kolb to carry this one on the floor. Okay, we're on to our final bill of the day. That would be Senate File 33, non-citizen driver licenses and ID card revisions. Could we have the department come forward and walk us through this bill?
Good morning, Chairman Pappas, members of the committee. My name is Misty Zimmerman. I am the program manager for White Out Driver Services. This bill was brought in the September meeting at the direction of the committee. A little background on this, I believe that it was with rising concerns on voter fraud. In November, LSO brought the draft bill to the committee and it was moved forward. I'll just quickly walk through the bill. It's pretty straightforward. On page 2 of the bill, lines 5 through 8, it creates an additional section for additions to the Wyoming driver's license, the contents under 317115. On lines 12 through 15, it duplicates that same information for the Wyoming identification card. At the request of the department, we did move this effective date to January of 2026. And that is to help facilitate not only our current modernization project that we're working through with our driver's license system, but also a change in our card vendor as we walk through this purpose. As it exists today, the current temporary or resident immigration status is passed through to the voter registration system. It is also in certain circumstances indicated on the front of the card, but this would allow for specific indication on the driver's license or identification card for those individuals who do not meet, who are not US citizens. So they meet the legal lawful requirement to be issued a Wyoming Real ID compliant card, but are not US citizens. So with that, I stand for additional questions.
Committee, questions? I do have one. In line 15, the contents under 318102, it says the card shall state not a United States citizen. And we discussed this earlier. There's not a lot of real estate on the card. And I would like to see, while I'm in favor of this bill and I want to see us do that, if we could somehow find a way to not put so much language on the card, maybe just non-US or something like that. Does this language preclude you, because of the quotes that are in there, of just using those words, or could you, do you think by rule and regulation, find a symbol, a shorter phrase or something? I just know we're running out of room on our cards.
Chairman Pappas, members of the committee, I would agree with that statement. Real estate is prime on that card, that there's a lot of information that needs to be passed. We continue to add things that are benefits to the citizens, like our voter register, like our next of kin, organ donor, veteran designation, those types of things. The card does have a lot of security features, and so as we start adding additional verbiage to the cards, especially something, and as we read this bill, the words "not a U.S. citizen" must be printed, shall be printed on the card. So as we read this bill, those words would have to appear. We would recommend that it is determined either by the department or in conjunction with ourselves as well as the clerks as they play a part in this as well, that be determined. It would be easily identified, a symbol. There's some additional room on where you see your organ donor or medical alert symbol, veteran designation. There's some real estate there that would be an appropriate place to put that, but we would take that direction from this committee and the body.
Thank you. Further questions? Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think specifically, how much room do we have to work with for lettering? I mean, I understand maybe we're up against a limit, but I don't feel comfortable letting the department decide what, I don't know, abbreviation we might want to have on there to represent what we're trying to represent here in the bill. So could you possibly expound on what we could put in there? I mean, how many letters do we have to work with? I mean, what do you think maybe our choices are for a designation on this card besides, I don't know, besides something I don't know what you're going to do, frankly? Just a thought. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, a reduction in obviously the length and character. I don't know, I'm pretty good at the layout of the card, but there are security features. There are reveals that need to stay free of all text as you walk through that. So as we walk through this with our vendor, they would determine what would be eligible to be added there. If you look at the top of the card, there's what looks like a skyline. Well, there's security features in those skylines and things like that. So anytime we cover those up, we reduce the security of our card. On the back of the card, there's some additional room that we would potentially be able to utilize. If you flip the back of your car or driver's license over, it shows that you have a next of kin designation. It also shows that if an individual is an emancipated minor on the back of the card. So there is some room on the back of the card as well as on that side of that card for an additional symbol. But we would take that direction. I can't give you exactly how many characters that we would be able to utilize. When you look at the card, what may appear to be vacant space on your card could be earmarked for another designation that you don't have or another type of indication that you don't have. So each individual card and type of card varies. So it's very difficult to say on every card this will fit, but we would be more than willing to work with the committee and with the body to determine what that looks like.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, follow up. So if we did try to abbreviate it here, any lessening of the length of said statement would probably be better. Is that fair?
Chairman Pappas, Senator Kolb, you are correct.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, I see you're here. Would you please come forward and give us your thoughts?
Thank you, Chairman Pappas. Pleasure to be here today. I'm Chuck Gray, the Wyoming Secretary of State, and I want to stand in complete and total support of this bill. I feel it provides a common sense added safeguard to our elections by making designations on credentials issued to non-U.S. citizens legally obtained by the Wyoming Department of Transportation. First, I wanted to note that this bill, from my perspective, is one that will provide clarity in the election administration space to ensure non-citizens are not allowed to vote. And I'm in complete support of clarity concerning efforts to prevent non-citizens from voting. Now, the specific sort of situation that this helps in providing clarity for is when somebody registers to vote either on the day of the election or before the election, but particularly on the day of the election, when in most counties we don't have what's called a have-a-check, and we don't have proof of citizenship. And so having that card say not a U.S. citizen, those non-resident designations should be kicked out from being eligible from register to vote. Now, right now, the card says non-resident. Last year, I brought a rulemaking that would have clearly stated in our rules that when a card says non-resident, that makes it clear that they're not a U.S. citizen, and those registrations should not be accepted. And unfortunately, those rules were vetoed by the governor, but here we are, and we still need to provide that clarity on the credential itself. And when non-resident, you got to think in the mode of the election judge at the polling place on the day of the election. They've got thousands of things going on. And I think it's very important that we have clarity on the credential as to what that means. So that's why something along the lines of not a U.S. citizen or not eligible for voting is very important from the election administration perspective and election integrity perspective. The one thing I want to push back a little bit against is at the last hearing on this, in the interim, we heard from the county clerks that, the have-a-check, and there are a lot of other checks that happen. Well, first of all, there's no have-a-check on the day of the election in all but 3 to 5 counties, depending on the election, because they don't have e-poll books. And two, this is different from the have-a-check. What this is an added security layer when somebody provides their license for registering to vote or voter ID, having that clarity that someone is not a U.S. citizen, particularly in the registration space, is very, very important. So total support of this bill, and thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Oh, you have some questions, sir.
Mr. Secretary.
Okay, go ahead, Senator Anderson.
Mr. Secretary, what do you consider a good abbreviation for not a United States citizen? Would non-US suffice for that on the ID card and the driver's license? Or do we need more than that? Or do you have a suggestion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Anderson. If we're going to shorten this any, I think maybe not a U.S. citizen is possible. I kind of like the suggestion in the staff comment from the committee in the fall that was not eligible for voting, something along those lines that would supplement not a U.S. citizen. But sounds like 2 lines is not something that they're going to be thrilled about over there. So if it's got to be 1 line, I think not a U.S. citizen is the bare minimum, in my opinion, for clarity for our election officials.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Brennan.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Secretary, can you just tell me how much of a problem we have with legal immigrants versus illegal immigrants voting in the state?
Well, Mr. Chairman and Senator Brennan, appreciate the question and the media coverage on this, I think, and it is a little bit of a confusing issue, right? I mean, there's sort of legal residents that are not U.S. citizens, and that's kind of who we're talking about right now. Hopefully, their system is catching out illegal aliens, but this is kind of the situation we're talking about. Legal residents that currently under Wyoming law can obtain licenses, and making clear that they're not U.S. citizens. And so that's the situation we're talking about. Now, we had a case in 2020 where an illegal alien voted in a Wyoming election. That was very disturbing to me. I asked the county clerks to report to me every single time in the 24 election that a have-a-check kicked out and a legal alien did not accept a legal alien, or when there was another part of the process that identified a non-eligible, non-citizen that was attempting to vote. I received 1 anecdotal report from Natrona County, and then I believe it was 2 emails beyond that. Yesterday, Miss Langford, who is here in the room, testified that it was over 10 when she surveyed the county clerks. And it was very disturbing to me that despite our letter, the county clerks did not report to our office the full extent of what we asked for. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Gray, I first suggest you call up Sweetwater, because I'm aware of at least one that was prosecuted on an illegal voting. Now, back onto the main topic here about what we can do for identification on this ID card. Would you be opposed, I just came up with a few things here, that just kicking it around, trying to get to what we were talking about during the interim. So not a US, non-NON, US citizen. So US just being U and an S and then citizen on the effort trying to abbreviate it. I mean, it could go kind of different ways, but I think we're limited by just how many letters we have. So I think the shorter it gets to the crux of the issue, the better. But obviously, I mean, you give your opinion, but what do you think about non-US citizen? Do you have any opinion, better or worse, Secretary?
Well, thank you, Senator and Chairman, and this is just off the cuff, just thinking about, I love the word not. I think it's much clearer. It's kind of a personal opinion. And I think from thinking about how election judges are interacting with this as the day goes, I think the word not is preferable in my opinion, but I understand where you're coming from. I think at one point, Ms. Zimmerman testified, and maybe she can come back up here, that once they dedicate a line to it, as long as it doesn't go over what's on the line, there's a line for it. So I'm not sure, once they create an extra line, that at some point they run out of room and then you have to go onto a second line, but maybe they have that number of characters. So I'm not sure there's really a huge upside on not a US citizen versus non-US citizen versus just not a United States citizen. Maybe they can testify to that, but if there is, then I see where you're coming from and maybe that's okay, but I kind of like the word not.
Any further questions? Thank you, Secretary Gray. Could we have representative, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you. You were there,
Good
of
morning.
course, when we had this discussion, and forgive me for not being here earlier. I was tied up upstairs. I just wanted to make a point that I don't know that I've heard in this discussion so far, in that in going door to door and doing surveys and talking to people at town halls, there was a lot of concern about election integrity. And I look at this issue as a way of responding to the people that put us here and doing everything we can do to ensure that our elections are secure. And because the state does issue cards to non-citizens and to, other states to illegal aliens, but we don't do that. I think the idea of having a card that just looks a little bit different is a really good move. I agree completely with the good Secretary of State. I like the word not as well. I think it's a little more plain English, a little more concise. But there's another item here, is this little up in the corner where the Wyoming logo is. If you get a concealed carry permit, it's a different color. If you get different cards, have different colors. And I would like to see that logo, that color changed. I think we tried to make that amendment, and I don't know how far that got, but I would recommend that same thing. Just so that if you're sitting there as an election judge and somebody comes by and shows you card after card after card, when you see one with a different color on it, it just jumps out at you and you say, wait a minute, what's different? And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions? Thank you very much. Are there any other agencies out there that would like to speak in the room? None? How about any public comment from anybody else? I believe the department head, looks like they have some additional information to share with us. Melissa?
Thank you, Chairman
Or
Pappas.
Misty?
Members of the committee, I just wanted to address what Representative Pendergraft brought up. We did discuss the difference in the banner color as we walked through this during interim. Currently, right now, Wyoming driver licenses have a blue banner, Wyoming in blue, and any identification cards, which includes our specialty ID cards, which are state employee cards, peace officer cards, your concealed carry permit, have a red banner. changing of anything of the color of the card itself requires a change in the substrate. So the fiscal impact that's indicated in the current bill would not support that change, because a change in the banner color would require a true change to the substrate of the card, the actual card itself, versus the personalization that's added to the card after the card substrate is produced.
Thank you. Question, Senator Kolb?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just how much? I remember we went through this about the extra cost, but do you have an accurate, I guess, estimate on what that cost would be beyond what the current cost is listed in the fiscal note?
Chairman Pappas, Senator Kolb, ballpark around $250,000.
Okay. Senator Cooper?
Ma'am, before you leave, would you have an estimate on the 250,000? Do you have any guess, estimate, whatever you might want to call it, on the number of cards that would be required?
Chairman Pappas, Senator Cooper, I believe I provided that information to the committee during the interim, and I don't have it off the top of my head today, and I apologize for that. 10,000 would be a ballpark, but I can get the committee the actual number back to you.
Senator Cooper?
So we're talking $25 a card, basically. I think that's a pretty minimal cost to ensure election integrity. I think it's something that we should, do you think it's something that should be considered for really that minimal cost for the result, the security it offers?
Chairman Pappas, Senator Cooper, that's truly a decision for this body to make. Currently, right now, the cost of a Wyoming driver's license is $35. The cost of an identification card is $10.
Committee, any other questions? Thank you. We do have someone online. Oh, she didn't join, okay. So no one else online besides, okay. All right, so seeing no.
One question.
Oh, Senator Kolb.
Could we, Mr. Chairman, could we ask Secretary Gray what color he would prefer? Would that be a fair question?
Secretary, please, I don't know if you heard the question because your mic was off.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Secretary Gray, my question is what color would you prefer if we were going to have a discussion about color, a different colored card? What would be, I realize you probably weren't prepared for this, but just off the cuff, what do you think?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator. Appreciate being brought back up. I do want to express my support for the color idea, changing the color for non-citizen designations. I think we were talking about green, weren't we? I think green was kind of my preference, but I can get back to you on that. I'm not trying to remember. What was it, green or was it? I think.
Senator Kolb.
Mr. Chairman, would that be a minty green or would that?
I don't know. I
Any
don't.
particular shade of green?
Let me. Do you remember? We did have a color in mind.
We did, and we were talking about red. We were talking about
Red.
something that would fluorescent, maybe fluorescent green. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's even possible with the vendors, but something that would stand out
Red.
differently than our current cards, because the concealed carry card, I didn't realize there's a lot of other cards that were very similar with the same color, buck and horse on it. Obviously, they're going to get all mixed up because I have a concealed carry card and a driver's license also. But yeah, that was, and the question was that we wanted something that stood out. And I don't think it really landed on anything particular, any particular color that was set. So maybe I just throw it back to you, Mr. Secretary of State. What do you think? And what would be your thoughts on that? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator. I like red as well. I like red. I think that'll stand out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ms. Zimmerman, would you please come forward again? I see you have a A comment?
Chairman Pappas, members of the committee, I just want to remind you that your identification cards are red. The banner is red on that card currently. So any state-issued ID card, concealed carry permit, state employee ID card, peace officer card have the red banner currently, and the driver's license is blue. So we would have to either pick a different color than those two or completely change two cards.
Or I guess it could be red, which would flag that there's something different. Either it's an ID or it's a concealed carry, but then still you would have to then put additional information about the citizenship, correct? I mean, you could do both.
Chairman Pappas, you are correct, but if you're trying to distinguish a non-US citizen Real ID compliant card from a US citizen, because if I had only an identification card that I was using to vote as a US citizen, it could get confusing. So if you're changing, I would recommend that if this is the direction of the committee, we pick a different color.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to throw out the idea, I guess, just as a color, black or white. And be it distinctly different than the two colors we have, which is blue and red. I prefer black myself, but just as a stark difference between the cards, Mr. Chair. I know that was questioned to Secretary Gray.
Would, let me throw out a question. Would, if we decide to change the banner color, could we not select the color now and allow that to be selected by rules and regulations? And so that people would have input into it during the, that process? I'm not sure that, we have to pick a color now unless.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Senator, I agree with you that we have a little time in this process, but I think having a rules process on it would extend this out, and with us trying to get the election cycle and start getting these out, because it's going to require renewals, to get these done. And I think it's better. I think we can come up with a color very soon. So maybe if we had a placeholder and then on the floor, and as the process proceeds, or even if the committee passes a placeholder and the chairman consults with the members, I mean, for floor amendment, I mean, I think we could come up with something.
Well, how about we do this, committee? We just pick a color now and they can change it on the floor if they want. So if we pick green, let's just go with it right now. And if we do that, there would be no text or other symbol put on the card. It would just be the banner change, correct?
Mr. Chairman, I'm a text guy. I think you'd also do the text, but in my opinion, I think they happen concurrently, but it's my opinion on it.
Senator Kolb?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just make a comment. I think if we change the color and we go through that expense, I think we should have text that represent the same color as the bucking horse that kind of go together. So it would stand out as not so cryptic just by the color.
Senator Kolb, one thing we can't do is change text color. That's not possible on this card.
Oh, well,
The
then I
text
just,
has to be black.
then, Mr. Chairman, we just keep the text black and change the color to green.
Okay.
Black card with black text.
Okay, are there any other questions? We probably need to work this bill so we can get it back upstairs, so. Okay, committee, I'll close public testimony, and please give me some direction on how you want to do. Anybody want to move this?
Move the bill.
Okay, it's been moved. And it's been seconded.
I have an amendment.
Okay, Senator Anderson, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend line 8 and line 15 and strike "not a United States citizen" on both lines and apply "not U.S." in deference to the Secretary of State, "not U.S." And that should be short enough that they can put it in there on any line. And it's just a notification to the clerk that this is not a US citizen, but I'm not putting citizen on it, just not US.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, and do we need the periods on US? Can we,
I think so.
you want to leave the periods on the US?
I think so.
Okay. Committee, any comments or questions or discussion on that amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Amendment passes. Are there further amendments? Senator Kolb, I think you probably have one.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would propose that we change the color to green to designate it differently than the other forms of identification for the, I guess we'd say the bucking horse. How would we identify that?
So Senator Kolb, I'm assuming on line 8 and line 15, after the amended language, it will say shall state not US, and the banner shall be green, or something to that effect.
That would work. I was thinking we did as appropriate with the LSO office to put that
Okay,
amendment in there.
well, I'll try
To work it in there, so
Yeah.
we do it.
But I think we need to make that change both in Romanet 4 and in B on line 12.
So the language that I have is, and the banner shall be green for now? Okay.
For now.
And that is the amendment I meant to say.
Okay, all right.
Second.
And we have a second for that. All those in favor, oh, any questions, any comments? Senator Brennan first. Okay, Senator Cooper, go ahead. Your mic's on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's critical that we make sure that this card is distinctive. And the color changes is part of doing that. There's other ways to do it, like we do with an 18-year-old, whatever it is, but it's got to be a very distinctive card when it comes forward. So I would be in support of this.
Thank you. Senator Brennan?
I appreciate what the senator is trying to do with the banner and the green. We don't have an exact fiscal, but if we're thinking it's around 250,000, maybe 2,000, like Senator Cooper pointed out, that's $25 a card. I feel like not US citizen should do the job. So I'm opposed to this amendment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cooper.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think if we put the amendment in there and then take it up to the floor and let the body really pick it apart, that's probably the proper procedure, but let's at least put the idea up there, and then we as a body can understand what we want to do with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments from the committee on the amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Okay, the amendment is passed. Any other comments or questions on the bill? Senator Cole.
One comment, Mr. Chairman. I have one comment, Mr. Chairman. I believe we'll probably see this bill back when it comes back at the end of the process. We'll discuss it further at that point.
Thank you. Okay, Pierre, could we have a roll call, please?
Senator Anderson?
Aye.
Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Cooper?
Aye.
Senator Kolb?
Aye.
Chairman Pappas?
Aye.
5 ayes.
Thank you. Well, that concludes our business for today. Thank you, committee, and thank you for all those who participated in the discussion of these three bills. Let's move ourselves up to